And we're back. We talked last Wednesday. It's Jeremy again with the Jeremy O Real Estate Group here in Utah, going over what's happening or what happened in the real estate market in 2020. We talked about that last week and what's happening going forward in 2021. Now, we don't have a crystal ball, but what we do have is good, solid facts, information on where we believe the market is going, and there are strong indicators that tell us, that give us reason to believe so. So with that being said, let's get into it. So number one, according to the Chamber of Commerce, there's actually a 54,000 housing unit shortage in Utah. Now, most people can feel this shortage, but they don't quite realize how problematic this is if you're trying to get into a home. Or you're coming from a different state that hasn't experienced this level of demand that we are experiencing in Utah. Now, if you actually look at the entire country, there is a shortage in most states, and there's a couple of reasons behind that. However, Utah is suffering from the biggest shortage, to my knowledge, in the country because of a few different factors. So let's go into that 54,000 housing shortage in Utah, what that is defined as. Really, it's new construction properties, pre-existing homes, and rental properties. Now, essentially, according to the Chamber of Commerce, they said because of this lack of inventory and too much demand and low interest rates, home prices are projected to go up roughly $1 million in the next 24 years, $900,000 to $1 million, depending on where you're at in Utah, over the next 24 years. So that's a pretty big projection, and let's break it down and kind of figure out what's going on in the Utah market and why that is happening. So there's a few things in the Utah market, but I want to look at this on a macro scale before we go micro into Utah. So what happened is that we didn't keep up with the demand in Utah and in the country over the last decade. If you actually look at the data says for the last 2, 3, 4 decades that we've roughly had about 10 million homes built in the United States per decade up until the crash or after the crash of '08. So really, if you look at the last, not the last decade, that was 2010 to 2020, but the previous decade, 2000 to 2010, there were 12.6 million homes built in the United States in that decade at the tail end of the crash. But going into 2010 to 2020, we built roughly 6.6 million homes in the United States. Almost half the production of homes built were built throughout the United States in this later decade, which has caused an inventory level shortage throughout the country. Now you combine that with Utah's market, and actually let me hit on one more point before I move on to that next segment. So one of the reasons why we've had this roughly half production in homes is because when the crash happened, a lot of the builders got out of the market, and the builders who stuck around to keep building homes became very conservative because there was an excess of inventory, and that inventory needed to be consumed before they could resume building the way they were before. And even when it did get back to a balanced level, which took about 2 to 3 years, unfortunately, a lot of people had some trauma, and I can understandably know why. With that being said, builders never got back to the rate they should have been building at up until the last couple of years, which has caused this problem. So for the majority of the decade, they just underbuilt. So now that we understand why the problem's here, let's talk about the problem a little bit more in depth so we know what we're dealing with. So essentially, like I mentioned, 54,000 housing unit shortage. Why is this happening? Well, we have low inventory levels, we have a high demand, we have low interest rates. And if you look at 2020, we actually had roughly 38% less homes, almost 1/3 of the homes less on the market month over month compared to 2019. Now, we are even lower inventory levels this year going into 2021. So with the inventory levels being so low, meaning just not enough homes on the market to meet the demand of the home buyers, there's too many buyers. And for example, in the Chamber of Commerce study, they said for every 3 homes that are built, there's roughly 4 families. So we just exceed the building rate because of population growth, according to the Chamber of Commerce, because of our experience at people coming inside of or coming from out of state into Utah. And then, of course, something else that I can't remember right now. Anyways, with that being said, there's a lot of factors that are causing this discrepancy. So with that being said, we have too low of inventory, so we don't have enough inventory levels. Our inventory levels are not high enough to meet the demand, and with interest rates being as low as they are, it is continued to project upwards as long as a couple of factors don't happen. So if right now we're projected upward going into 2021, unless something crazy happened like interest rates flopped and they went from being the lowest to the highest, that could change the direction of the market. Essentially, if you lower interest rates, you increase the demand in the market because more people can get into homes because you have more buying power. If you flop the interest rates, and at that point, less buyers have buying power, therefore there's less people who can get into the market. And if we went up a little bit in interest rates, actually a good amount of interest rates, it would knock out a lot of the demand, but it wouldn't be enough, in my professional opinion, to flop the market because we have too much demand, not enough homes. But if it did drastically change, that could change the market. So crystal ball, I don't have one, but every indicator I do have tells us we're going to continue to go upward as far into 2021 and beyond. But if something like that did happen, or the forbearances that have been piling up, that could affect the market more than slightly. But with that being said, I don't believe that's enough for us to change the direction of our market as long as interest rates stay relatively where they're at now. Because just like with COVID in 2020, a lot of people thought the market was going to flop. We saw roughly 8 to 10% increase in 2020. And if you look at the inventory levels and demand levels during COVID, especially at its spike, we had way less homes on the market. COVID hit, we had a spike in homes that came onto the market. People got nervous and some people had to sell their homes. And even with that spike, we got close to inventory levels in the previous year of 2019, but we never rose above the 2020 or 2019 levels, even with COVID. And then within about 30 to 40 days, that inventory spike did come down back to where it had been sitting for the 2020. So basically, in a nutshell, I know there's a lot of things going on out there. With that being said, we do see the market continuing to project upwards. And if you are thinking of selling or buying real estate in the Utah market, just take this information and ask, how does this fit your goals? Some people are like, I'm going to hold out for the crash. It could happen. I don't see it happening. Some people are like, well, you know what? I want to wait to sell because of X reason. Well, just make sure you are an informed buyer and seller in Utah's market, and take this information that are the facts and are my professional opinions, and of course other people that we network with as well. So with all this information, just make sure that you and your family make the best decisions for you and your family. And if you do decide to get into the real estate market or have any questions about the real estate market, just make sure you have a trusted real estate professional on your side so that they can not only understand the facts and how the market's behaving, but leverage that knowledge and their experience to help you outperform the market to make sure you get the best results possible in today's market. So with that being said, my name is Jeremy with the Jeremy O Real Estate Group, and I'm super excited to have this opportunity to share this information with you. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks. Bye.